the early expeditions treat the Tibetan and Sherpa climbers who actually lived in those areas?
I would say it was mixed. I mean, I hate to take it back to colonialism, but I mean, the arrival of the British changed a great deal in the Himalaya and provided opportunities. And one of the biggest opportunities was in Darjeeling, which as a town did not exist at the start of the 19th century. But the British stole tea from China, planted it in places like Darjeeling, which had the perfect climate, and developed an industry, developed a tea industry. The reasons for that we don't need to get into, money,
But
money,
lots of money.
lots of money.
Yeah.
That needed a workforce. And there were lots of people in the Himalaya. And one of the reasons there were lots of people in the Himalaya is because of the arrival of the potato.
Yes, that was the other thing the British contributed.
We brought the potato.
The potato came from the Andes.
Via the British. That's
Yeah.
all I'm saying. The
Okay,
rumor,
so our offering
legend
to
in
the
the-
region.
Yeah. No, you're right. You're absolutely right, Ben. That's right. They grew them in the garden of the residency in Kathmandu. And from there,
Exactly.
they spread out.
well, and the word in the Khumbu. So the Khumbu is the Everest region of Nepal, and the Sherpas there like to tell the story that there was a gardener who worked for some of the Brits in Darjeeling, and he smuggled back a potato plant. And that transformed. And anyone who's trekked in the Everest region or any Himalayan region in Nepal understands that like 90% of the diet there is potatoes.
It's potato. So it was well received, the
Yeah.
potato.
Yeah. Why the chips in under Everest are so good.
Yeah,
The
it's
French
true.
fries.
One of the interesting things to get to your question too, Claude, is to look at the potato. A lot of the monastic infrastructure in Nepal was built in the late 1800s, early 1900s, whereas in many parts of Nepal, the monastic infrastructure dates back into the, 8th century and beyond. But one of the reasons that it's relatively late, my understanding is that's relatively late in the Everest region, is because that's when the potato came in. And finally, those communities were able to sustain a monastic population. They had enough food resources because those communities are at such high elevation. They depended on trade for survival, but then they could actually have more permanent settlements and they could support. They had the potato created wealth that they could support the Buddhist population there, the monastic
And
population.
you had less infant mortality. People were just better nourished, more calories. So you have excess population, and that excess population needs work to sustain itself. And a lot of guys, especially at the lower end of the socio-economic spectrum, go to Darjeeling to find work, which is why Tenzing Norgay, who was the first man to climb Everest, 1953, was in Darjeeling. But they didn't come from the climbing. I mean, they did eventually, but to start with, they came to work in the plantations and as porters and as, Darjeeling went from nothing to tens of thousands of people kind of in a very, very short period of time. And a lot of them came from eastern Nepal, but some of them came from the Himalaya too. So there were like neighborhoods in Darjeeling by region and ethnic group. And it was to those people that the early climbers went in order to find staff to work on expeditions, because you need muscle to carry stuff. Gear is much heavier in those days. You need a lot of food and you need people to carry it.